So I grew up playing 5 card draw with my family. Like every Sunday, it seemed like we would pull out the cards, we'd get some M&Ms together, and we'd play 5 card draw. And I thought that's what poker was. So Rounders introduced me to Texas HoldEm. But for me, poker was 5 card draw or 5 card stud, as we called it, when you didn't have to draw any cards. But anyway, so I got some cards here, and I thought we could just play a hand or two. Let me go ahead and shuffle these. Because you gotta shuffle the cards before you deal them. You know that, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to have the jokers in there.
Can you hear that? Let me get that shuffle a little better so you can hear. Huh?
No, I can't hear it at all.
You can't hear that? Okay, all right, never mind. Well, just so you know, I did shuffle them.
Okay.
And I'll show you that I'm gonna cut them. See, they're cut. So okay, here we go. Here's a card for you, card for me, card for you, card for me. We're doing what? 5 card draw or 5 card what are we playing? Stud? Or draw? You got 5 cards, right?
I don't have any cards, Johnny. You're in Texas. I'm in Utah. This is why I don't like online poker. How do I get the cards?
I would have won anyway, see?
Oh. Talk about stacking the deck.
Welcome back to NostalgiaCast. If this is your first time listening to one of our episodes, my name is Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And this episode, we'll be talking about Rounders, 1998 film directed by John Dahl, starring Matt Damon and Edward Norton and John Malkovich. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and do a quick recap of our last episode with, we had Gareth Green on from Popcorn Digest, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I was introduced to him as from Best Forgotten Movies. He and Andrew Raphael, started a podcast, and that's, again, we talked about it during the episode. That's what inspired NostalgiaCast. Made me start to think, hey, we can do a podcast. Why don't I get my friend together, and we'll start a podcast about movies. So we owe them a lot. And then again, chatting with Gareth, we talked about Forrest Gump. That's the movie. I think he mentioned he was just trying to figure out movies that he's nostalgic for. And when he hit on that one, he's like, that's the one. And when we were chatting, it was like, Forrest Gump is great because we're going to do a 90s season on 90s movies. So that, and especially coming after Pulp Fiction, especially since they were rivals at the Oscars. I think that was a great kind of 1-2 punch as far as that goes. And, we came down, it's a problematic movie. I think we're all in agreement that the filmmaking is top notch. Some of the acting, Tom Hanks has a very strong following. You obviously didn't, you're not as much of an appreciator as Tom Hanks' Forrest Gump as most people, but you still liked it, right?
I still liked it, but I think it could have been better.
Right. So the acting, the filmmaking is above reproach. I think it just comes down to the themes, like the pretty themes versus the ugly, the pretty visuals versus the ugly themes, ugly ideals. As far as like, you have to be, follow the feather, like don't make decisions on your own. If you try to do that, you die. It's kind of, you suffer for it, until you give up, until you become that feather, and that's just one interpretation. I know a lot of people love the movie, and that's the sign of a good movie, is that you can come back and have different meanings for it. But I think the idea we came down on is like, what is this movie about? Like, even though we're talking about it, like, what is it about? Like, at the end of the day, like, I still don't know like what it's trying to say. I think I know what it's trying to say, but like it's very muddled about saying it. So again, Forrest Gump is something that's beloved. It's just one of those movies, unlike Pulp Fiction, unlike some of the other movies we'll be talking about this season. It doesn't hold up as much as it did. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think people still like it because it kind of has the feel-good moments. It's kind of a feel-good movie, so people still, latch onto it.
Right. People feel good about this decrepit, ideal. That makes sense. So again, we'll leave Forrest Gump, and obviously we probably cause some controversy with that kind of idea. But yeah, we'll kind of leave that behind. We'll move on to our next movie then.
All right, let's get into rounds. But before we do, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Okay, are you ready?
What's the limit here?
Big bet's $20.
Good. Okay. It's 20.
You've seen half the hand. How the hell you betting into us?
We know what we're holding, and we know what you're holding.
The hell you know what we all have.
Well, you were looking for that third 3, but you forgot that Professor Green folded it on 4th Street, and now you're representing that you have it. The DA made his 2 pair, but he knows they're no good here. And Mr. Eisen is just futilely hoping that his queens are gonna stand up.
Kiss my
Take it down.
All right, take a seat next to me.
I can't. I don't play cards.
Get out of here.
How can I concentrate with you looking like that?
I'm really late.
Oh, come on. I'll be really quick. You won't feel a thing.
For the last 2 years, Mike McDermott has been doing the sensible thing. But his best friend just got out of jail.
I can't believe you still know someone called Worm.
He's like my brother.
You domesticated yourself for this girl.
And needs someone to lean on.
I need money. I gotta put some scratch together, man.
I consolidated your outstanding debt. 25 grand and still running. What I did was go partners with an old friend of yours.
We do what we used to do, man. You find the games, you scout them, I sit and I mop them up.
Michael McDermott. I knew you'd be back.
Last night, I sat down at that table, and I felt alive. My blood was bubbling, my skin was tingling. I was James Colburn in The Magnificent Seven throwing knives.
Hold on there a second. Whoa. The guy's a cheat. Right now, he's ruining your reputation.
If you don't give my money, then you are mine.
I vouched for the wrong guy, so now it's on me.
But I can't stay for this.
For what?
To watch you go all in again.
We can't run from ourselves. Our destiny chooses us.
Deal.
Matt Damon, Edward Norton, John Turturro, John Malkovich, Gretchen Mull, Famke Janssen, and Martin Landau. Rounders.
Okay, Rounders, 1998 film, directed by John Dahl, starring Matt Damon and Edward Norton. John Malkovich, John Turturro, Martin Landau is in there, and also Tom Aldridge has a cameo as well as one of the judges. I chose this movie, first of all, Darin, because I don't know about you, but in 2003, when Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker, I kind of fell in love with Texas HoldEm, and I became fascinated by it, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about it. And I had seen Rounders before this happened too, but when I first saw Rounders, like all the poker lingo, Texas Hold'em jargon that you hear in the movie was kind of lost on me. I didn't really understand what I was listening to, even though I knew the game of poker. I just didn't know Texas Hold'em poker. Yeah. And so when Moneymaker won and the whole poker boom happened, like I was right on board with that. I was trying to learn as much as I could, as fast as I could. I played all the time with my family members and friends. In fact, I kind of have the poker boom to thank for meeting my wife, because had I not been that interested in poker, I would not have gone to Vegas with my friend who was friends with my current wife. So because I went to Vegas with them to learn how to play poker, I met my now wife. So
Rounders, basically, you owe it your life.
Right. Okay. But I mean, speaking of the movie itself, back when I first saw it, like I loved it. I just thought it looked amazing. Like that's one of the biggest things for this movie for me is it just has a look. It just has like a style. The cinematography is so pretty to look at. Like every shot is just so nice and so well done. It's so well lit too. Like everybody just looks so perfect in every scene. And I just was like, it couldn't get any better for me. So I was loving what I was seeing. I love listening to the dialogue. I thought the script was really well crafted.
Okay.
I thought the acting was good too. Even though I mentioned when I announced we were doing this movie that I thought John Malkovich was kind of, on the cusp of being, bad with his Russian accent. I still think that it's one of the funnest parts of the movie for me to watch him do those scenes as, Kenny KGB.
Yeah.
Or Teddy KGB. Yeah. Sorry, not
KGB,
Kenny.
Right.
But anyway, it was a fun movie. I didn't really see it in the theater for the first time. I saw it on VHS, but even when I saw it, I fell in love with it instantly, and I watched it a lot. But when I got into the poker boom, that's when it really started to I started to understand it. I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. That's what that means. That's what that means. And then I really started to fall more in love with it. But anyway, so that's my history. That's why I chose it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Well, I don't really have a history with this. I know that this came out what did it come out? It was filmed after they'd shot Good Will Hunting. And I
Yeah.
know Matt Damon became a star. I think the producers said like within 24 hours he became a star as soon as that movie, like a megastar. So so it came out after that and kind of was a boom because of it. So it was one of those things that. So I saw The Rainmaker, Courage Under Fire. We saw him in Good Will Hunting, obviously. So and Saving Private Ryan. So Matt Damon was, but this is just one of those movies that I think kind of slipped through the cracks. I wasn't ever able to see it. I'm a big John Dahl fan. Red Walk West. When I was watching again movies in the '90s and I was renting everything, that was a movie with Dennis Hopper and Nicolas Cage, Laura Flynn Boyle, and it's just one of these. It's a small noirish kind of thriller, and it's just like 90 minutes. It just booms. You're in, you're out. It's like really quick. It's really hard boiled. It's really tough and gruff, and it was a lot of fun. I remember watching it on video, going, "That was a great movie. That was a great little fun." Little bottle movie it's not trying to be anything more than just a contained little thriller. And then the same thing when he did Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino. I mean, that was a big deal among critic circles. I remember renting that one and not really being as impressed. I think just it was a little more inside baseball-y than I would have liked, but it's still like very impressive, like stylish things like that. So again, I've been a big John Dahl fan. Joyride, obviously he did that later. That's a really fun like B movie thriller.
Isn't
as
that
well.
Steve Zahn and
He's on and
Paul
Paul
Walker,
Walker.
right?
Yeah. So again, a tight little thriller. Like it's not trying to be more, and it's kind of like a slasher movie, but it's smart and it's fun and it has good performances. And so he's a good taut director. I know that I'm gonna have to look this up because as a director, he's gone on and done so many like.
He kind of went on to a television career,
Yeah.
with Dexter and Shameless and Billions, and he did some Walking Dead episodes. He's done Breaking Bad.
Yeah, so a lot of these like Shameless and The Americans and Hannibal and Ray Donovan and House of Cards and like you said, Billions and like Yellowstone, which is on right now, For All Mankind, which is pretty big right now. So again, a lot of like prolific as far as like TV director, and so he's good. So again, it's not that I purposely chose to ignore Rounders. I think it's just, and Edward Norton too. Obviously, I'm a big fan of his. I think it just slipped through the cracks, and I was never able to get around to it. And so when you mentioned Rounders last time, I was like, oh, I've been meaning to watch that. That'll be fun. And so the only experience I had with it this time was, you put it on and you were watching, and it was the kids don't go to bed, like 9:30 around here, but I started at 8, so they kept wandering in and out, and they, the language is pretty pervasive, like the use of the F word. So we kept having to turn it off, like and pause it while they were in the room and flipping it out and stuff like that. So that was interesting as a watch. But again, as someone who and I was texting you about this, as someone who's not really caught up in the poker boom, to the lingo you talked about, I'm still not 100% on it. So that's why, obviously you're good to lead this conversation, but I think this movie, it plays, and the filmmakers use this term, it plays like a sports movie. It doesn't play like an addiction gambling movie, even though that's a part of it. And that's a good deal of the drive, but it's more of a sports movie. Like he's good at something and he knows that he wants to succeed at, and he does.
Yeah.
So
I think that's why it's successful. That's why it works. And I think John Dahl even said that he didn't know much about poker, but he did know sports. And so he's like, this is going to be a sports movie, directed like a sports movie. So that's what he did. And it worked.
And that helped for that. You got the screenwriters. What are the screenwriters' names? Again, they did Billions, Tilt, stuff like that.
Koppelman?
David Levian and Brian Koppelman. Most recently, movie-wise, they wrote Ocean's 13. So that's where a lot of people will, which is a good comeback from Ocean's 12, no matter what you think of that movie. Kind of a return to form. So, they wrote it as the lingo. I know that when they were studying and to do stuff like that, like they really got in depth with that. But then you have John Dahl coming and directing it like a sports movie, and then you have the actors coming in and having their different approaches. So without John Dahl, like if John Dahl had directed it like Koppelman and Levian had written it, it would have been maybe too. It would have forced me out. You know what I mean? But the way that John Dahl directed it, to make it like that sports movie, the way that they wrote it to give you like a different like world, like you're part of, I think that works for the movie. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, they immersed themselves in that underground, poker world. They didn't even know that subculture existed until they started doing the research for the film. And then they, for months, like played poker with these like, Russian mobsters in New York, in these underground casinos, basically. And so that's where they got all the research from. That's where they got all the jargon from. And I don't think they were really prolific poker players either. They kind of, fell into it later and started playing poker more and more after the movie was already released, right?
Well, I think like one of them, either Levian or Koppelman, was really into poker, and that's where they got the idea. I know they wanted to write a screenplay together. They both had their jobs that they were working, and just felt like they were not succeeding where they needed to succeed. And so I really like the story of how, and again, they became best friends in school and things like that. And they were just trying to figure, and they talked about movies, which, well, obviously we know a little bit about that. And they were able to write the screenplay. Like in the mornings, they would go and they would write. They rented a storage shed, like in the basement, and they would write for 2 hours and like try to make each other laugh. And then they'd go to work, and that was the creative part, was what really helped them. But I know that they got interested in poker, and that's why they went. And again, I think that's an interesting. When you're writing a movie, you want to what's a good hook for selling a screenplay, I think, is latching onto a world that people aren't quite aware of or even know exists. And then you immerse people in that world. And so the way they have this underground poker and Texas HoldEm and stuff like that, with all the underground gambling and things like that, that's a world that we're not aware of. Even the actors weren't aware of. Yeah. And so I think they had a good hook with that screenplay to start with.
Yeah. I'll tell you what hooked me was the very first line. The very first line of the screenplay is, if you can't spot the sucker at your first half hour at the table, then you are the sucker. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in. Whatever this is, I'm in. I want to see from then on out the rest of the movie. I was hooked right away. So I think that was good. But I really admire those two. I like that kind of story where two friends get together, they have a like-minded goal or mission. They set out to accomplish it, and then they accomplish it. I think that's awesome. I love that. And I don't know, I've always wanted to co-write screenplays with you. Even I've always said we should write together, you and me. Let's get together and write a screenplay. And we've tried. I don't know how successful we've been, but we've tried.
Yeah, it's just life. What's the John Lennon quote? Life is what happens when you're busy making other. Yeah. It's just life gets in the way, and so it's just a matter of finding that time.
But then also, there's a saying too in the theater, like the right parts are the right actors are usually found for the right parts. You know what I mean? The part finds the right actor. Same thing with the screenplay. Like if it's the right time and place, it'll find a home. It'll find a way to get made. And I kind of experienced that just when I was making one of my student films. Like everything fell into place the day before we're supposed to fall in this place. Like I'd be like, how are we gonna make this next scene? How are we gonna do this? We don't have a camera, we don't have a set, we don't have this. And the day before, it would fall into place. And I was like, it's happening. It must be meant to be. It's supposed to happen. So I just kept going with it. And I kind of felt that way, reading about this, researching this about these two screenwriters, is everything kind of fell into place right at the last moment for them. Like they had the agent who was trying to sell the novel, but yeah, he had a screenplay. He sold that first, and then like they got Miramax involved, and they started getting the actors involved. They didn't know they could get Edward Norton. They got Edward Norton. All of a sudden, it kept happening. It kept falling into place for them. And I was like, that's just so fun. It's so fun to read those kind of stories.
Right. Well, we'll talk about like the how the movie worked. And because I wanted to mention that when the movie ended, I was like, okay. Like I hear people talk about it all the time. When it ended, I was like, all right, like that was fine. Like I don't, and if I walked away from it, I don't know if I would have been impressed. Like it was fine. It tells the story. And like I was thinking about stuff after. Oh yeah, that makes sense. And that fell into place. But like as far as people talking about it, I was kind of like, well, I didn't really get that in as well. So what I did is I read that, I think I texted you, I read in the Ringer, there's an article that I found, Going All In, an Oral History of Rounders by Alan Siegel. And so he talked with Koppelman, he talked with Levy, and he talked with Dahl, he talked with, I think they got Matt Damon from some other interview that he did. They talked with Norton, they had Famke Janssen that came into it. The producers, obviously, Ted Demme, Joel Stillerman. Anyway, so they're interviewing all these guys, and I just liked all the if I hadn't read this article, and this is where I think like a lot of times you want to do research instead of just brushing a movie off. If I hadn't read this article, I wouldn't have appreciated or thought about a lot of the nuances that are in the movie.
Did you do the article before watching the movie?
No, I did it after, because again, I was trying to figure out, you read stories about all the famous poker players, like you talked about Chris Moneymaker. Is that his real name, by the way? Yeah, Moneymaker. Interesting. So
well, he talks about Johnny Chan and Phil Hellmuth and Amarillo Slim and Doral Brunson for the most part in the movie.
Yeah, so there's that. But you also had people like Chris Moneymaker, who mentioned the movie, David Migranu,
David Negron. No, it's Daniel Negron.
Daniel Negron. So I'm going to get Habad Khan, Dutch Boyd, Gavin Griffin, Vanessa Russo, Phil Gordon. You know, a lot of these guys that are players that are really big. I say guys, but Vanessa Russo's in there. You know, people that became addicted to poker and addicted to playing the game. They attribute this movie to that. Like this movie turned them onto that world.
Yep.
And so it's just interesting. Again, if you don't, I just think it's an interesting case study. Like some movies you can brush off, but if I hadn't have read this article, I wouldn't have liked the movie as much as I do now. Like reading this, I liked all the stories like you were talking about with Kaufman and Levian. Like everything kind of fell into place. I know one of my favorite stories that I read is from this article is that John Dahl was either going to direct this or he was going to direct a movie with Michael Keaton in it.
Yeah.
And then he decided on a day, I'm just going to do this movie. And then when they started shooting Rounders, Michael Keaton happened to be in New York. And his publisher, something like that, got a hold of the screenwriters and he wants to meet you. And they're like, oh, okay. So they met Michael Keaton and Michael Keaton's like, I just wanted to meet the guys that beat me out. Yeah. So it's just kind of cool stories. I think when they were doing research, they just written the screenplay. I think they just cast Matt Damon. They got John Dahl and they were playing poker in some underground tournament. And they were talking with the guy. They started chatting with the guy about movies. And the guy was like, Matt Damon, you got Matt Damon in the movie. Matt Damon's like one of my best friends. And the screenwriter's like, yeah, give me a break, right? So he's like, no, I'll go call Matt right now. So he left the table, he got on the phone, and then he came back and he said, yeah, Matt's coming down. They're like, what? And so Matt Damon showed up with Ben Affleck. Like they both showed up. Ben Affleck was quoting the dialogue from the screenplay to him. And he talked about Michael Bay because he was shooting Armageddon at the time. And so I think it was Kaufman just says that they were just outside just chatting about movies and about screenplays. Like, how would that be? Just have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Obviously, they're not huge stars quite yet, but they come down and, you know, so I like all this behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's Edward Norton that says when he read that, what was the line? Like, what were you even mad at him for? Like, oh, you slept with his wife. It's like, well, she was a good looking older lady, right? And Norton was like, I'm in, like, I'm sold on this dialogue already. And so I think Norton said something like, you read this dialogue and you're just salivating to say it on screen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I remember watching the movie for the first time and just being like, this is so well written. Like every line I just want to quote. I want to be able to like kind of copy and mimic what they did and say it the way they said it. And I used to practice saying those lines. Actually, it was kind of funny. But I think one of the best scenes in the movie is in the gym in the church when you just were talking about. When Worm's running away from his problems and Matt has to find him and he finds him in the gym hiding away. That back and forth, it's so well written and it's so well acted. And the everything about that scene, I love. I love the way that scene is blocked. I love the way it's, shot, everything. And it's like that throughout the whole movie. Like a lot of the scenes are just so well done that it just kind of like brings you along scene after scene. And you just, for me anyway, like I just get hooked in from the very first line. Next thing you know, I can't wait to watch the next scene. And then of course ends with that climax with John Malkovich and his Russian accent. But anyway, real quick, talking about the screenplay, I liked in the article where it talked about the screenplay wasn't finished until they came up with that line, I have 3 stacks of high society. And I forget what the original line was, like the placeholder was something about like a dime or
yeah.
What was it? Anyway,
something like that.
I liked that they came up with that last line and they're like, okay, that's it. It's finished. And I've always loved that line. So it's funny that that's the line that they finished on because I thought that was a great line.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. What I most recently Spotlight did this where they have a lot of like, they talk about clips, so they're newspaper people in Spotlight, right? I mean, they talk to each other like they've worked to each other for years. There's never a part where one character goes, what's a clip? It's like, you've worked together for 5 years. Why would you not know what this word? Because it's a screenwriter thing. Like you don't want to lose the audience. But in a movie like Spotlight, the way that's written is they have the lingo down. And so you buy into that world and you get what they're talking about after a while. What's great about the jargon in this is, again, it's very heavy. Like it comes at you nonstop, but they never bother to explain it. Like if you sit back and you pay attention, you'll figure out what they're talking about. But the lingo is so pervasive, the jargon, that you buy that they're in this world. Again, I think that's a hook of the screenplay. So
yeah, it It's like other movies of other, professions. You don't see movies, with ER doctors not dumbing down their language for the common man, for the viewer. They say what they're going to say. And so when you have people in the poker world saying what they're going to say, that it just adds to the realism of it.
Yeah. And again, you just pay attention. You let the movie go with it. Again, I still don't understand. Like I still don't understand a lot of stuff that happens. Like if I were to, I'm going to ask you like 5 questions, and I want you to let me know, like, and just these are the ones that are like, oh, I wonder what that, and I wonder what this means, wonder what that means. So I'll ask you these questions, and you let me know what the answer is. All right. First of all, what is a rounder? Start with an obvious one.
Yeah, I would say a rounder is someone who makes the rounds of the poker scene, kind of grinding out of it, trying to earn his rent money, just kind of grinding his way through, that kind of thing.
Okay. What is a bankroll?
A bankroll is the money stash that you have, the amount of money you have to gamble with.
Okay.
Or what you've won. Or
what you, okay.
It's your money. It's your bankroll.
That's what to get you going. What is base dealing?
Base dealing, that's like a technique when you deal from the bottom of the deck.
Okay, so that's a cheat, right? That's where
that's what Warren does when his mechanics that he does when he deals. Yeah.
Okay. What is a tilt?
Tilt is when you kind of go on a losing streak and you start making bad decisions, and you get really, really angry, and you lose your whole stack like in one hand. Or it's basically you're no longer thinking straight. You're letting your emotions get the best of you.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. And then because I never, like, the big thing with these poker things is I never get how they win. Like, oh, they had an 8 and a 9 and a 10 in a row. I'm like, oh, and that's how they go. Oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. But for spoilers for people I haven't seen it, how does he beat Teddy KGB? He beats him with a nut straight. What is a nut straight?
Well, first of all, when someone flops the nuts, the flop is the 3 cards of the first 5 community cards dealt out on the table. So you get 2 whole cards, which is each player gets 2 cards. And then there's 5 community cards that you can use to make your best 5-card hand. So the flop is the first 3 cards that come out. So if you flop the nuts, that means you flop the best hand. No one can beat you. You're 100% going to win the hand. You flop the nuts. No one can beat your hand. So he flopped a nut straight, which means he has the straight that Teddy, based on what the cards are left in the deck and everything, Teddy can't win the hand.
Okay.
Right. So Mike's going to win the hand because he has the nuts. So the next 2 cards don't matter. The turn, the river, or 4th and 5th street, they don't matter. So when Matt was checking, on those 4th and 5th streets, and then Teddy would bet, he was trying to get him to fold or call, whatever, so he could win the pot, not knowing he's already lost.
Oh.
Matt's like sitting there playing it, or Mike sitting there playing it cool, like check. That's why he's like, check, he beat me, he trapped me. So that's what he did. He trapped him. So he already had the winning hand, and so he just kind of slow played it until the very end, where he went all in and then turned over the. So when the ace falls at the end, like Teddy's representing having the ace. He might not have the ace, but he represented it. You know what I mean? That's why he's like, you can't believe what fell.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I say, it just means you have the best hand. You have the nuts.
Interesting.
Unbeatable.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, again, listening to all these people talk, like Moneymaker and Griffin, all these, how they say that this kind of, and there's a quote from Vanessa Russo, I'm just going to read it. It says, there's been lots of movies that have included poker, but only Rounders really captures the energy and tension in the game. And that's why it stands as the best poker movie ever made. Even watching the Siskel and Ebert review, Siskel starts the review saying, like, I'm playing Texas HoldEm, and what I like about this movie is that it gets the appeal of it. It gets the draw, so to speak. It gets like why it's so exciting. So for you, Jonny, again, since I don't have an in with the poker, like, again, I was asking my wife, like, how come, if this is a sports movie, how come I can like really empathize with football players, with basketball players, with baseball players, but with card players, I don't really empathize with them. My question for you is why, what as a poker player, as a card player, what about this movie? Are there specific scenes or specific moves or specific things that they highlight that you thought were really entertaining as a card player that it got you?
Well, first of all, I would agree with those other critics that says it's the best poker movie ever made. I do agree with that. There's nothing else out there that I've seen that compares to Rounders. The way, like I said, the way it's shot, the way they did everything, it's just so much better than the other ones. But there's not to say that the other ones are bad, but they're just not. They don't hold up to Rounders.
Yeah.
But what was your question again?
What were some of the parts? Were there any specific parts of the movie that you enjoyed? As a card player,
I love all the poker part, all the games when they're playing different games. They're trying to go on that run. They're trying to get the 15 grand together, and they're going to the dentist game. They're going to the golf pro game. They're going to the the cigar club game. All those games are just fun. It's just fun to watch them. I don't know. I don't know. I love the back and forth during the games. I love just seeing them in their element. It's just such a fun for me anyway, because I try to imagine myself in their shoes. What would I do if I was playing that game? How would I react? How would I? So anyway, it's just I don't know. That's what appeals to me really. It's just the poker playing part of it. Watching them play the game, because the thing is, it's a game of patience. You have to be really patient, and you have to take your time. It's not something you can just run in and play real quick and be done. It's not. It takes a long time. And when I play, I usually play tournaments. So you have to kind of make sure you play the right hands. You have to know, not to quote Kenny, what's his name? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Oh, Kenny Rogers, yeah.
Kenny Rogers. But anyway, it's true though. You have to have a lot of patience for the game, and so I think that's also what appeals to me. Is I like just how you have to kind of bide your time and just you also are playing the player too. I like that too. And you're not just playing the house. I never liked games where you're just playing the house and you don't have the advantage. When you're playing against the player, you can make a move without having the hand. You don't have to have the cards to win. You're just playing the player. If he acts weak, you can take him out by a stronger bet.
Interesting.
Or you can play slow and you can act like you don't have it, even when you do, and you kind of trap them. It's just a fun game. It's just once you learn it, it's addicting. It really is.
Interesting. So the other question I wanted to ask you too is Siskel at the end of the review says the thing that he doesn't like about it is the tells. He thinks that the tells aren't as strong. It doesn't really work. There, first of all, do you have a comment on that? And second, are there anything, because I know you like to pick on things, they wouldn't do that in real life, knowing that you're an actor, but are there any things that they get wrong simply for the fact of making it cinematic in the movie? First of all, what do you think what Siskel
I don't know. Honestly, I think the tells are real. They're there. And like you said, they're unconscious sticks that you don't know you're doing. I remember playing a game where I I think I had the winning hand, but the way the guy was playing against me, I was so intimidated by his moves. I was like, he's got to have it. He's got to have it. Even though I knew that I probably had the best hand, I still folded and gave it to him. So that's what I'm saying. You don't have to have it to win. But I probably gave off a tell that he picked up on. Okay. I didn't know I was giving off. That's why he played so hard against me. You know what I mean? And when I spot that with other players, I do the same thing. I come back over the top of them and I play hard against them. And then they end up folding to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's a real thing. You don't know you're doing it. You do, shift your face in certain ways. You do kind of, smoke a cigarette a certain way, like they say in the movie. It happens. It's real. It's a real thing.
You open your Oreo and you listen to it, or you eat it, that kind of thing. Well, were there
a little more for the cinematic part of things? But.
Yeah. So were there any parts that they get wrong simply for the fact of making it more cinematic? Were there any nitpicks that you have with the poker play?
I don't know. It's pretty dang accurate, man.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that underground world, but I do know the world of poker tournaments and casinos. My first year anniversary, we went back to Vegas. We met in Vegas. We went back to Vegas, and I took first place in my poker tournament that I entered the very next day. And so what was funny about it is we were walking past this lady who was trying to sell us something. And I said, no, I got to go get in this poker tournament. And she was like, oh, good luck. And I was like, oh, I'm going to win it. And then when I came back, I had a stack of cash in my hand. I kind of waited. I said, see, I told you I was going to win. And I flashed some money in her face. She's like, oh, you won? It was so funny. And then a few years later, we went back again for a vacation. And again, I entered a poker tournament and I happened to win. Even though I didn't win, we kind of tied for first place, because when you come first and second, you just kind of throw the cards out there and they kind of whoever gets the winning hand wins. And even though I might have come in second, I still kind of claimed that I won, because it was kind of it's the last hand type of thing. But anyway, I got enough money from that game to buy our tickets for the Tournament of Kings at the Excalibur. Okay. So I was the exact amount. That's what's so funny about it. It was the exact amount that I needed for those tickets for the three of us to go watch this show was what I won in the poker tournament. I was like, awesome. You know what I mean? So, and then of course I played in Wendover quite a bit, and I've placed and made the final table quite a bit. So I've gotten good over the years, but I haven't played in a long, long time. So I'm a little rusty.
Oh, okay. Well, again, that's the cool thing. Like as I was watching, I was like, well, obviously Johnny's going to have to. I have no like personal stakes in what's going on. Like I don't know. I don't have the same attachment to these guys that I would like a football player to Rudy. I wouldn't have the same attachment like to Gene Hackman. We talked about it in Hoosiers. Like there's an attachment that you have to those characters. Even though this movie plays like a sports movie, I didn't have that same connection to these characters because of what they're doing. So I thought, well, Johnny's going to be able to tell me like
Yes,
what.
but did you kind of like find yourself loving the back and forth between Worm and Mike? Like, wasn't the dialogue so well written, and watching them perform it, and all the scenes after they got beat up by the cops, that scene's awesome. The scene in the church, you know, the scene in the car, the scene with the secret handshake kids. All those scenes are so well written and they're so well performed. Did you agree with that?
Yeah, here's the thing. So screenplay wise, I know that, you know, and we might come back to this movie, we might not, but like the Rainmaker in '97, the narration in this movie reminded me of the Rainmaker, because again, it's Matt Damon doing the narration. And then there's the scene that I like where Damon's like, he's got Martin Landau. That's a great get too. You know, you got Turturro, you got Landau, you got Malkovich. So he goes to visit Landau, like one of his teachers, and he's with all these judges, and he's able to tell everybody, like he has this long monologue about how you have these cards and you have these cards and you have those cards. And I was like, well, this is like a repeat of the scene, you know, the "How do you like them apples" scene, you know, in Good Will Hunting. And he has that same kind of spirit. And so I was like, well, what is this? Like gambling Will Hunting? You know, as I was watching the movie, it does have, so there's some similarities between that with Good Will Hunting with all this stuff. I did like, you know, Affleck, he's nowhere near as good or an electric as an actor as Edward Norton. It seemed like it had, and this is a compliment to their acting, I really felt that they were friends and that they knew each other. I felt like Ben Affleck could have played this part, like I said, not as well, but he could have played the part and they would have had that same energy that they had in Good Will Hunting. So I bought them as friends. I bought Worm as a screw up. There's literally that part, and the music sting gets you, like when he's playing with the cops, all the off-duty cops, and all of a sudden you hear Worm's voice and there's a music sting. You're like, oh no, what is he doing in here? And he's trying to play it cool. So you can tell that he's a screw up. You can tell that they have a history. They do have that back and forth. And it's not like, I don't know if the material is like juicy. Like if you've seen a lot of movies, you basically you know that Worm's always going to be a screw up. He's addicted. And that's where the gambling thing comes in. Like that's the addiction. That's his character. And he's able to, he puts a spin on every line of dialogue. And so that's what I think is fun about Norton's performance, is he's kind of a live wire, kind of playing by the seat of his pants. But I do agree that they did have a good byplay with each other. And it's to the point, you know, you're thinking like, yeah, I get that you're loyal to your friend, but you got to leave this guy. You got to leave this guy behind. Like he's pulling you down. If I were to look at the arc of the movie, what I liked about the movie the most, the Gretchen Mull character, I don't know if she was written well enough to make much of an impact. I think they might have been able to leave her out, because she's the girl that's sleeping at the beginning, right? Where he's getting all that before he goes and loses the 30,000. And then, so I get that she doesn't want him to go back to this world, right? But I don't know if her character was somebody we necessarily needed. It just adds another wrinkle that I already got. I wouldn't have needed that. And I don't know if you agree with this. They don't really build her character enough that I believed in their relationship. I don't know if I get that they were together, but I didn't feel it when she left him. I felt it because, you know, he's lying to her and she doesn't want him to go back to this world. But I don't know. I just felt like you could have dropped that whole subplot.
I know what you're saying. I can see that too. I know they were worried about becoming like a love, like a romantic thing or something. They didn't really want that in the movie. So I think that's why
and you look at the poster and it looks like it's a romance, right? It's got Gretchen Mull, like her with her hand on Matt Damon's chest with Edward Norton in the back, like on his toothpick. So it looks like, oh, he's a scamp. You can tell he's a scamp, you know, kind of thing. But what I like is that it seems to me that Mike it's not that he is addicted to it as much as he knows that he's good. When he loses the Teddy KGB, he knows why he lost. Like he went in there like overconfident. He knows why he lost it. He knows that if he can get back in there, that he can win because he'll know how to play. I really like that angle of Mike. He knows how to play. He knows that he's good. He just needs to get that chance. but he's got all these other things that he needs to run through. He's got what is her name? The Joe is the girlfriend's name. He's got her to contend with, and how he's disappointing her. Obviously, Worm comes out, and he automatically puts Mike under like $7,000. He gambles in his name, and
Yeah.
Bill's like, all that. And so in order to play, he needs to shed all of these attachments that he has. He's got the John Turturro character. What's his name? Kanish.
Finish.
Right? Joey Kanish. So he's got him as a mentor. He kind of shows up, and he confronts him at that part. And he's like, you never go for the big game. And I like how Kanish is like, I play because I've got alimony to pay. I've got kids to feed. Like, it's a job. Like, I don't need to go for the big school.
Yeah.
I just need to make enough to support myself. And then, so he has all these people that, obviously Worm is bringing him down. He has all these people that show him that's not how Mike plays. And then I like how he goes to see the Landau character. And Landau basically tells him, what's Landau's character's name?
Petrovsky?
Petrovsky. He's this old, he's not a sucker. He's not an idiot. He's not like, he gives him the money, obviously, but that's because he cares. But I like that he tells Mike, it's like, you can't run from your destiny. It's like, once you find what you're good at, that's what you're good at. I couldn't be a pastor because I wanted to do these other things. And so that's the kind of the advice that gets to Mike. He's like, yeah, I'm going to lose all these things. I have to shed all these things, but this is what I'm good at. And I need to do this. And so when he gets himself out, that's the relief, right? He beats Teddy KGB because he figures out his tells or whatever. And he can walk. He's done. Like, he's even, right? He can go back to normal. But, obviously Teddy taunts him, obviously you're playing with your money, right? Like, or I'm playing with your money, and taunts him back in. And he's like, all right, that's enough. You need to shut your mouth. So Mike comes back in, and he's able, like you said, to play him. And he kind of needles at him in a way that KGB like loses, because he realized
he goes on tilt.
Yeah, it goes on a tilt. He just emotionally, he loses it. And I liked how KGB is like, his guys kind of stand up to beat Mike up, and he's like, no, he beat me fair and square. Just give him his money and get him out. I like that.
That's one of the best lines that he delivers is pay him. Pay that man his money.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We need to talk in depth about that. But I like that. Like, as far as the screenplay goes, I like that it tells this little contained story. Again, it's like, I'm always going to use this as an example now. It's like Top Gun Maverick. It's like, it's not groundbreaking in any way. It just tells a good story.
Yeah.
When you have all these other movies that are so fluffy and they lose track of characters, it's nice to have a movie that comes in and just, it's got good character. It's got a good story. There's nothing groundbreaking about it. It just tells a good, solid story. And I like that, but like I said, obviously I didn't get a big rush at the end. Like, when you get at a sports movie, even though that's kind of what it aims for. I don't know.
Yeah. See, I kind of wanted to see him walk into the Mirage, just walk in, even though it's not held in the Mirage anymore. But it would be nice to see him walk into a casino in Vegas. That's what I wanted to see.
I think in the novelization, I think I was reading somewhere that you do actually get that. You get a bit of an epilogue, and you find out that he never sees Worm again. But I think Joe invites him to her wedding, but he decides not to go. So you do get a lot of epilogue stuff. But yeah, the movie it leaves you like, I'm going to go and I'm going to see what I can do. And
yeah, which is also good, but get a little more closure with him walking into a casino.
Right. Well, it leaves you with, he knows what he's doing. Like, he's going to be confident whatever he does, no matter what he loses, no matter what he wins.
Right.
He knows that he's good at it. Again,
yeah.
I just like that it's a good quality story. If you really think about it, it's really tight.
Yeah.
And it goes in line with John Dahl's other movies. It's like a very small bottle, self-contained movie that just tells a good story, and then it's out. Then you're gone. You're done.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of hit upon some of the acting. I know we want to talk about Malkovich.
Oh yeah.
I think we can kind of gloss over Damon and Norton, because we both know they're good. They fill their roles just fine. They do a good job. I like watching them perform these characters in this movie, and I like listening to them say their dialogue. It's really, really fun.
I'm gonna say this again. If you have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, I know a lot of people like Affleck, but to me, I can always see it's always Affleck acting. Like, the only times I've ever been impressed with Affleck's acting is when he directs himself, like in The Town or Argo. I like him best in those movies because it seems like he loses all his Affleck. I don't know what it is, but whenever I watch Affleck, I can see him. Oh, he doesn't. And Matt Damon's the opposite. Like, Matt Damon, you can see him thinking. You can see him,
yeah,
when he's talking with Norton, like, he's thinking through, okay, how it just seems like it, and that's what I mean when it has the Good Will Hunting vibe. Good Will Hunting has like an improvisatory, whatever the word is. It seems
improvisational.
Yeah, improvisation. It feels like it's real. It doesn't feel like it's scripted. And it's the same thing here. Even though it's scripted with the lingo, it just feels like this is, yeah, that's something he would say. You know, that the dialogue is all very natural. It fits everybody. You can see the wheels turning in Damon's head. That's what I like. That's the sign of a good actor. And Affleck, you can just, to me, it just looks like, oh, this is my next line. Like he doesn't really feel, you know what I mean? And so as far as that goes, I just think that, you know, Norton is a better, you know, when you capture Damon and Affleck on screen, they have a natural chemistry because they've been friends forever, right? So
yeah,
that's why I think it would have worked. I just don't know if Affleck would have brought that same live wire kind of, you know, break free at any moment kind of, because Affleck is always looks like he's acting. I don't know. I need to mention that because I think Damon is a much better actor and he feels a lot of that. And you can see, like I said, the wheels turning. So yeah. And you put him and Norton together, it's like, yeah, they've got chemistry. I like the behind the scenes stories that they love Midnight Run so much that they would have contests.
I like that. That was cool.
See if they could like perform entire scenes. So, and that definitely comes across in the, so yeah, it's just very natural acting.
Okay, so let's go to Malkovich. I want to know what your thoughts are on him and his acting.
Well, here's the thing. When he showed up at the beginning, like he's only in the beginning for like 2 minutes, right? And like how you talked about his accent, I was like, oh no, here we go. But his accent wasn't that bad. Like for the first 2 minutes, I was like, okay, oh, he's eating the Oreos, you know, whatever. Like I posted on Twitter, like, who's a fan of Rounders? Like I posted a picture and people like a couple of pictures, people sent pictures of Oreos. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever that means. And so I like that was that little quirk that he had. And but again, he's only in it for that short amount of time. So I was fine with it. But when he comes back and he has those long, I don't know, it just, and I know the story is they asked him if he wanted to coach and he says, no, I've got it handled. And he showed it. And I guess he had some Russian woman say the dialogue and he just copied how she said it. And that's how he did the dialogue. But it just seemed like, as I was watching, I'm like, I don't buy this, man. Like, I don't buy that you're Russian. He was just like, give the man his money. You know, it's just like, he didn't seem Russian. He seemed like a guy that's trying to do a Russian act. I don't know. I just didn't buy it. It was just, I was laughing the whole time. I didn't buy him as a threat.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? When you watch it again and again, it grows on you. Okay. And you start to go, you know what? That's pretty good. Even though it's kind of bad, it's pretty good. You know what I mean? So, and you start to find that kind of humorous because, at least I do anyway. Like, I love those scenes just because I like listening to him, you know, use that poor Russian accent.
Right.
But
well, he's good.
It's so bad that it's good.
Yeah. Well, it's enjoyable. Like, it's not like he takes me out of the movie. It's not like, you know, when Mike Myers shows up in Glorious Bastards and you're like, this is Mike Myers. Like, I don't buy you saying anything. I just see you as Mike Myers. Like, I don't, or you're using a British accent. Oh, that's Austin Powers. That's great. Thanks for coming in the middle of this Tarantino movie. So it's not like that. I mean, I enjoy Malkovich. It's just, it doesn't seem, I didn't buy for a second that he was Russian.
Yeah. I love too that the filmmakers were like, are we really considering having an intervention to tell John Malkovich not to use this accent or to kind of tame it down a little bit?
Yeah.
But,
and I think Norton and Damon were looking at each other.
You know? Yeah,
and they were like,
kind of like run with it. So,
yeah. So again, it's just funny. I didn't buy a single word. I didn't buy him as a Russian. Like I said, it was just with the Oreos it's fun little quirks, and I like that he's in there to kind of give the movie some life. It's just really funny when you think about it. I don't know.
What was the story too that like sometimes he would do it so bad that he would look over at Matt Damon and be like, "Yeah, I suck sometimes."
And that's interesting. I know that what's his name, Grandma Rispoli.
Yeah, the guy in While You're Sleeping, right?
Yeah, like when he threw the Oreos, like I think Rispoli says, "Oh, and Malkovich is just a good aim that I didn't react." And so it was funny, you know, Grandma, like it's just in character, like he doesn't even budge, like he throws the Oreos and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. So I like, and Malkovich walked over and said, "Are you okay?" Like,
yeah,
I liked Malkovich is so, you know, it's like Gary Oldman. He's so intimidating, and they play bad guys so often that it's just refreshing when they're, you know, kind of nice, like and they're very humble, you know, on the side. So I like that. It's very endearing.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else that you want to mention?
No, I think I talked about Gambling Will Hunting. I talked about the Rainmaker stuff. Again, Damon has a good energy. Norton has a good energy. And I think because they buy it, we end up buying because they're so believable with the dialogue. Even though I don't understand what they're talking about half the time, they know what they're talking about. So I'm like, oh, I buy them as people. You know what I mean? The only other thing I guess I could say is that Counting Crow song. It's funny seeing like it get a credit or an end credit. And I texted you as I was watching it going, this Counting Crow song is terrible. What does this have to do with anything? It was just you were singing off key. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a big Counting Crows fan.
Okay, good. I just didn't know if that was. It's again, it's funny when we talked about Taps, how Tom Cruise wasn't the draw, and it's funny with this how Counting Crows was kind of a draw. I was like, Counting Crows.
You know what does surprise me though is it got such bad reviews when it first came out, and they actually pulled it early from the theaters so that they would kind of protect Matt's name because he was becoming so big with Good Will Hunting and everything. But man, it sure gained a following later. Like it's a cult classic now. Like people love this movie. I mean, at least in the poker world, they love this movie.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame when movies. Again, I don't think this is the greatest movie ever made. I think it does what it does. But it's a good movie. It's a quality movie. It's sad when a quality movie doesn't get the attention at the box office that is, or the critical attention. But a lot of times, a movie just has to grow. Like as Martin McFly says, like I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are going to love it. It's like eventually it'll find its footing. And again, a lot of poker players owe their careers to this movie because it inspired them. You know what I mean? And so. That people have come to it eventually. That's what matters, I think. Even though it kind of sucks that it didn't get that correct.
I mean, I have memories driving to Wendover and having Rounders playing on the little DVD player in the car. So, like, kind of getting me in the mindset of playing poker. We'd watch Rounders on the way to play poker. So, like, yeah, I definitely can relate to that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, critic stuff and box office stuff, it doesn't matter to me because the movie matters to me. That's what matters. If it's a good movie, I don't care. And it's nice if it makes a lot of money. If it's nice if it wins awards, it gets good reviews. But at the end of the day, that shouldn't worry you. You know what I mean? You get excited about the movies that you like. Like, don't worry about what other people think. But yeah, the validation isn't necessary, but it is nice. I guess you could say it's nice that this movie is found, and I'm glad that I came around to it. I'm glad that I finally saw it, that it's in there. The more that I think about it, the more that I like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you were excited about it.
One day we'll have to play poker, and I'll teach you some of the jargon that they use in the movie.
That'd be great. Again, I liked how Mike needles KGB. I liked how that's how he beat him. It's the emotional thing. Like he owned him. From the instant he sat down, he owned him. Like that's it. Like I'm gonna play this. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this. And it's still tense, but yeah, I liked it. Again, it's like I said, more that I think about it, the more that it works as a sports drama. So yeah, Rounders, good show.
All right, very cool. Well, I guess we'll have to come back and I don't know, do something.
All right, we'll play a game or something like that.
Okay, we'll be back soon.
Okay.
You must be kicking yourself for not walking out when you could. Bad judgment. But don't you worry, son. It will all be over soon.
And we're back. Hey, Dan, real quick, was there anything we forgot? Because I know sometimes we forget things.
Well, we mentioned how the movie looked. We mentioned the cinematography, but we didn't mention the cinematographer's name. And I think a part of that was like I was intimidated because I don't want to mispronounce his name. It's Jean-Yves Escoffier. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Jean-Yves Escoffier. Again, he worked on Good Will Hunting. Again, the cinematography, it's the same as the screenplay. I think it immerses you. The other thing, too, Robert Pearson's production design, one of the notes I had is that this movie looks grungy and it looks dirty. Like when they go into these, especially when you go into grandma's, like his, the brothel or whatever, it's dirty. And you like when you're in there, like Mike and Worm aren't touching any of the walls. And it seemed, I was thinking like, that's a smart decision, like to do that.
Yeah.
But again, I just think that everything looks lived in. It kind of immerses you in the world like the screenplay does.
But it also has like kind of a soft feel to it too. Like there's definitely like a softness to it. You know what I'm saying? Like the way it's lit and the way like the rack focuses are worked and everything like that. It just has like this a softness element to it too, which I really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
So he definitely deserves a shout out for sure.
Right. I mean, stuff I'm talking about, the production design, a little bit grungy, but the cinematography, like we talked about, it's pleasing to the eye. I think that's what you're kind of getting at. It's just very easy on the eyes.
Very smooth. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, shout out to that.
Okay, so we decided we're gonna do our top 3 Matt Damon / Edward Norton movies, acting performances, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do Edward Norton, my top 3 Ed Nortons, and you're gonna do your top 3 Matt Damon.
Okay. Do you want to do like your 3 Edward Norton, then I'll do my 3rd Matt Damon, or you want to do all Edward Norton? And
Let's
all?
go back and forth.
Okay, sounds good. You go ahead and start.
Okay, so my number 1 Edward Norton movie is, as far as performance goes, I know it's a controversial movie, but American History X. I think he delivers a performance that is, you can't touch it. He's so good in that movie. But when I know we talked about a little bit that this is it's a hard movie to watch. It's not a fun movie. It's a good movie. It's well done. But once you've seen it once, you don't need to see it again. But as far as his performances go, it's up there with the best.
Yeah, it's a tough watch. Obviously, it has to do with Nazism and all that stuff. And I know there's a history of Edward Norton kind of taking control of the movie and directing that himself. The fun part, I think, when we're talking about Matt Damon and Edward Norton getting along, they showed each other cuts of their movies. Edward Norton showed Matt Damon American History X, and I think Matt Damon's reaction was and then Edward Norton was like watching Good Will Hunting. He was like, this is really exciting. So I like that they were able to share that. Yeah. And they both became kind of bigger stars, before Rounders.
Because of those 2 movies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Matt Damon performances, I don't know if I would go from strongest to least strongest. I just think he's a very entertaining actor. Like he shows up in The Martian. He shows up in, even though it's not easy to watch, Contagion, like Ocean's 11, like his Linus. He's Matt Damon shows up and he's pleasant to watch. He's
likable. Yeah,
he's charismatic, right? So I'm not going to pick movies like Ocean's 11 because it's just him working off his star persona. I'm going to pick movies that kind of show him as like, oh, I didn't know Matt Damon was capable of that, right? And again, the first one I'll pick, I'm going to pick Courage Under Fire. Again, he had a supporting role in that one. What was do you remember his name in Courage Under Fire?
No. The only thing I remember is that he lost weight and got sick for the part.
Yeah. So he's nobody knew who Matt Damon was at the time, right? Like it was before he became big, and still when they were filming Rounders, people didn't fully know who he was. So he comes in Courage Under Fire. Ilario is his name. And he's one of the soldiers that was out with Meg Ryan and Lou Diamond Phillips and that kind of stuff. And because he becomes addicted to drugs from the experience, right, of what happened to the Ryan character, he becomes emaciated, and so he's unrecognizable. He's so skinny because he's doing the drugs. And it's just when you watch it today, you're like, whoa, like that's a performance. Like he went all in. He Christian Baled that stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Like, and so that's his Robert De Niro moment where he loses the weight to play this character. It's a harrowing seeing him from kind of chubbier during the Gulf War scenes to just, like I said, emaciated in the afterwards when Denzel Washington is investigating the case. So that's, again, he's capable of these really strong performances, and I think Courage Under Fire is one of those that's a good signal for where he's going to go or what he's going to be capable of.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Good movie too. Okay, my second Edward Norton film. It was kind of hard to decide, but we talk about this one a lot, and we're going to talk about it with one of my guests coming up in a future episode. But his performance in Fight Club, it just blows me away. Like what he was able to accomplish in that movie is also it's mesmerizing. And so, yeah, I got to pick Fight Club.
Okay. Yeah. Another movie where the performances aren't to be faulted. The filmmaking aren't to be faulted. There's going to be a conversation we'll have about Fight Club. That's an interesting movie to talk about and kind of sink our teeth into.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like he's the star of that. I mean, Brad Pitt's the showcase, right? But like the guy that carries it is Edward Norton, and he does a good job. I don't know if like Edward Norton is like, he's just good. I don't know how else to explain it. It's not like a Robert De Niro. It doesn't seem like where he disappears into a role. I mean, it's Edward Norton, but like in Rounders, he just gives these interesting little ticks, and he does these interesting things with it. Even in a movie like The Italian Job, which is kind of him slumming, right? I mean, he's still trying to do interesting things to make it work. So and the thing with him and The Incredible Hulk is, I think my problem with that movie is Edward Norton is such an electric actor. Tim Roth is such a strong actor that to see them turned into, anonymous CGI creatures at the end, that's a dangerous way to make me turn on your movie. It's like, I don't care about this. I want to see Edward Norton. I don't want to. The Hulk doesn't even look like Edward Norton. I know that's a conscious choice that they made, but it alienates me from the movie. When I go to see an Edward Norton movie, I want to see Edward Norton. I don't want to see a CG creature take over. So he's good in that one as well. So okay, so my second Matt Damon, I'm gonna have to pick any of the Bourne movies, really, because I think when he did the Bourne Identity, like, we didn't know he was capable of. He became an action star in that movie within the first, when he's on that bench and I think the Russian officers come by and he wipes him out with like 3 moves. It's like, whoa. But you buy it. You know what I mean? It looks like that's him doing it. And he just becomes, I think my favorite performance in any of the Bourne movies is probably him in Supremacy. And spoilers if you haven't seen that movie, but when Marie dies and he doesn't talk for like 30 minutes, he's like a missile and he's dangerous. And when he's determined, and it's like Matt Damon is pulling this action hero stuff off. He can really sell it. So again, it doesn't require, like, acting wise, he's good, like Matt Damon always is. But the fact that he became that action hero and we can buy him as that, I just think that's impressive. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think he's great in those movies. I mean, I really like that character. I don't think I like him as much as you do, because I get tired of the action at some point, and I just want to see more of the acting and character stuff. Yeah. But I still like that character in those movies. So yeah, I agree with that.
Good physicality that he brings to that. So yeah,
right.
Great.
Okay, my number 3, Ed Norton. I'm gonna pick Primal Fear because it was the first movie that I saw him in that kind of brought him to my attention, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" Because that was amazing. However, I do think it's not as good as some people say it is, and I know he's playing the part in the movie. He's acting like, the Roy character or whatever it is. But it's almost you can see through it in some points. You know what I mean? So even though it's a really good performance, there's moments where when I see that he's acting, that I see that he's delivering a line, and so that's why he's not number 1 as far as Primal Fear for me, anyway.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't want to. The twist to that movie is everything, and that's what makes it interesting. I don't know if I've never been a giant Richard Gere fan, but I know what I mean. Like Primal Fear, he does. He takes over for that, and it's an impressive early role. Like,
yeah, it's a really good performance. Just maybe not the best, but it's still good.
Okay, and so I told you before we started recording, my third pick here is going to be The Informant. Have you seen The Informant?
Yes. Yeah, he's great.
I was going through a list and again, I was like, oh, he's great in The Martian. He's great in Ocean's 11. He's great in Invictus. He shows up or Adjustment Bureau. Matt Damon's always good. We Bought a Zoo. He's even good in that. Like, he's compelling in that one. But The Informant. I was watching clips before we came back, and just all that, his performance in there is just so funny. There's a scene where he's confronted by the what's his name from Quantum Leap? Crud, I can't remember his name.
Scott Bakula.
Like, he plays Scott Bakula's an FBI guy, right? And
Joel McHale's the other one, right? Isn't Joel McHale the other FBI?
He's the other guy. And so, like, they're coming up to him like, who did you tell about the, like, Mark? Because he plays Mark Whitaker. He's like this guy that kind of informs on his company that they're doing all this like white collar crime stuff, right? And so I was like, well, I told my secretary, I told this other guy, I told this guy, and then there's later, after he brings down the company, there's even a scene that I was laughing at where he's talking with Melanie Linsky, who plays his wife, and he's talking about how he's going to become CEO of the company. And she's like, why would you want to keep working at a place that you brought down because they were corrupt? It's just this whole, and it ends the movie with him bald and stuff. It's just, he disappears in that part, and it's so funny.
He's got the mustache going too, right?
Yeah, it's so great. It's just one of those movies. It's just so funny, and it's entertaining watching him kind of, I think there's a part where he has a breakdown. Kind of, it reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that scene in his trailer. But yeah. So again, it's Matt Damon disappearing in a role. He's just so funny instead of just like he plays an actual character. And so again, if you haven't seen The Informant, it's a Steven Soderbergh movie. If you like the Ocean's movies, you'll like that one. It kind of has the same kind of breezy feel. But yeah, The Informant is great.
Yeah. Okay, so what were our top three again? My three were what did I say?
American History X,
X, Fight Club, and Primal Fear.
And I had, again, my top three performances: Courage Under Fire. We'll pick The Born Supremacy if I have to pick one, because I think that's his best performance in there, and The Informant. If you want to go for full-on comedy, see him become a star. I don't know. He just made me laugh every 5 minutes. Yeah. I was laughing at something. So
that's cool. Yeah. All right. Well, that's Rounders. So that'll do it for us this episode. What do we have next episode, Darin?
Okay, well, we're going to have another guest on. Again, his name is Phoenix Clouden. He goes by IMHO Reviews 1 on Twitter. He's become a very good friend. We've bonded over Stanley Kubrick, just a lot of conversations that we've had on Twitter. Just being able to chat with him, and it's just kind of like, you ever find somebody that's like, it seems like I've known you since high school, like, you know. And so Phoenix is a good guy, and so he's a good film critic. He's very opinionated, and so we're going to have him on and be having conversations. And the movie he picked was Ghost.
Oh, okay.
Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore,
yeah,
Tony Goldwyn, and
that's like early 90s, right? Like,
yeah, 1990. Again, some of these movies are very. We're going to be talking about movies that kind of defined the decade in a lot of ways. I think Ghost came out of the gate in a way, and it defined a lot of that summer that it came out. It was pretty big.
Yeah,
so it's going to be fun chatting with Phoenix about that. We're going to have him on to chat about Ghost. But until next time, I'm Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Jonny Craddock.
And we'll see you guys next time in NostalgiaCast.